to Silicon Valley Nonprofits, a service of KMVT Community Media. I'm Bev Lenahan, your host. Today, our guest is Choso Kazushima, Executive Director of Hakone Gardens. Thank you for coming today, Choso. Nice to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to get to talk about Hakone Gardens. I think it's such a special place. So today, remind our viewers, if they don't know, what is the mission of the foundation, different from the gardens?
Right. The Hakone Foundation was founded in 2000, and the city of Saratoga, which is the owner of the park, wanted to have a nonprofit organization manage and operate the park on their behalf. And so the mission of Hakone, the foundation, is to promote the culture of Japan through the gardens and to use it as a forum to have different types of educational programs and so forth so that people can learn a little bit more about Japan.
Very important, very important. And I think especially in today's climate, anything that we can learn about our local benefits, we want to do that. And so I remember a long time ago that Hakone's got a really rich history. Tell us about the founders and how it all kind of came to be.
Right. Hakone Gardens is actually 102 years old now. And it all started in 1915 when San Francisco hosted the Panama Pacific Exposition.
Ah, yes.
And Oliver and Isabel Stein, who were prominent San Francisco socialites, visited the exposition, and they toured the Japanese pavilion, and they fell in love with Japan and its culture, and so they decided that they wanted to build their own Japanese garden estate, and so they purchased 15 acres of land in Saratoga in the foothills Santa Cruz Mountains.
Which was very rural at the time.
Very rural. It was all logging, and in fact, the hillsides were all barren because all the redwoods had been logged. Oh. And so they purchased their 15 acres of property, and in 1916, Mrs. Stein, Isabel Stein, and her eldest son, Michael, traveled to Japan, which was no easy feat back then because there were no jet planes. It was all by boat.
Oh my.
And so they traveled to Japan, they toured around and visited different Japanese gardens and parks to kind of get their inspiration and ideas for their own Japanese garden. And when they came back, they actually built the Upper Moon Viewing House in 1917. And from there they also built the lower house, and they built and designed the gardens, which is a traditional Japanese hill and pond style garden. They actually hired a Japanese architect and Japanese landscape architect to build and design their garden for them.
I love the hill and pond area. I have to say that's my favorite.
It is, and you know, today the pond and the koi and the turtles are actually, I think, one of the most favorite parts for not only adults but kids as well.
For sure, and a lot of photo ops, that's for sure. So tell us a little bit about the Hakone Estate and Gardens today, as you formally call it.
Okay, sure. So Hakone was owned, the founders were Oliver and Isabel Stein, and they owned, and unfortunately Mr. Stein passed away in 1918, just a year after the upper house was built. But Mrs. Stein continued to use the estate not only as, it was more of a retreat. She was a San Francisco resident.
Lived in San Francisco.
And so she would come down on weekends or summer, and she would also entertain friends and family at the garden. And that's pretty much what she did from 1917 to 1932. And 1932 obviously was the height of the Depression. And so she could no longer maintain the property. So she ended up selling it to Major Charles Lee Tilden. Tilden of the Tilden Parks. He was yes, exactly. And he purchased it, and he and his heirs owned the garden from 1932 to 1960. And when he passed away, he left it to his stepdaughter, who then left it to her son. And they continued to use the residence again as a retreat. And in 1960, Michael Gregory decided that he could no longer maintain the property, so he sold it, and it was sold to a group of local residents who purchased Hakone again, to use it as a personal retreat, weekend retreat, summer retreat. And so they continued to, Hakone remained a private residence for the first 50 years. And in 1966, the partnership group decided that they too, it was very expensive to maintain a Japanese garden and to maintain it at the level that a true Japanese garden needed to be maintained. So they needed to find someone who could purchase the property, but they didn't want to turn it over to developers because they wanted to maintain the garden and see that the garden's maintained as well. So they approached the city of Saratoga, and the mayor at the time, William Glennon, was able to convince the rest of the council to invest and purchase Hakone and make it one of their city parks. And so in 1966...
That was pretty bold.
It was. And considering that they had just incorporated as a city recently.
Even more bold.
And so the city took it on and purchased the property in 1966 and made it one of the city's parks. And we call it one of the city's crown jewels.
Of course. I'd say that's true.
It is. And, you know, it's not your normal park. And again, it was very difficult for the city to be able to maintain the park within its own budgets. And so they, in 2000, they decided that they needed to form a foundation, which would then be contracted with and would operate and manage the park on behalf of the city. And so in 2000, the Hakone Foundation was created, and it's been running the park on the city's behalf ever since.
So it's 2000. So now it's kind of a public-private partnership, isn't it? And the foundation is actually doing the fundraising too, not only the operating, but...
We the foundation, do manage the park through the operating budget through our daily income revenue, which 60% of our revenue, daily operating revenue, is generated from events that we hold. So weekend weddings, business meetings during the week, classes that we hold.
I've been to several.
And so that makes up 60% of our revenue, box office, our regular gate revenue, as well as memberships and donations. And then we have our annual gala, which contributes to our operating funds. And so that makes up the bulk of our operating revenue, but the city does contribute operating funds for capital improvement projects. And so when we have infrastructure issues, the city helps us out by providing funds. One of the big things that we have right now that we're just wrapping up is actually our pond filtration system building.
I understand they had to get some deeper water for those koi.
That's going to be the next step. The first step is giving them better water to swim in. And so that's through the help of the County of Santa Clara Board of Supervisors. They gave us a grant of $100,000.
Wonderful.
And provided that the city match it, and the city graciously doubled it. And
wonderful.
So we were able to get the first phase of our master plan underway, and we're just wrapping it up right now. The plumbers and electricians are getting everything set so that within the next couple weeks, the fish will be able to swim in some nice clean water.
Oh, terrific. That's, I noticed that last time I was there, that it looked like it could use some help. And I live where there's a koi pond as well, and I've come to really enjoy just watching how they go about their day.
It is. You know, Japanese gardens, our gardener and I have been to a couple of conferences, and they say that Japanese gardens actually help reduce the heartbeat and blood pressure of people as they're sitting there enjoying it. It's a true Zen experience.
Yes, very much a stress reliever. I can vouch for that. Yeah. I can vouch for that. Well, what would you say is your role in the community now? Because this is kind of switched a little bit as of 2000.
Right. So, you know, Hakone, we really want to use Hakone to help the community learn not just about Japanese culture, but all different cultures and how they all interrelate. We can use the gardens to help promote Japanese culture and art, not just by walking through the gardens, but showing different things. We have tea ceremonies, and we actually have tea classes that are taught on Fridays and Saturday mornings.
Nice.
Something it's not just about the history of Japan, but something that's also, it started in the history, but continues on, and it's something that future generations will continue to be involved in. We also have Tai Chi classes Thursday afternoons. We have karate classes 2 nights a week, and then we also have Zen meditation. We have 2 different Zen meditation classes on the weekends, one on Saturday morning and one on Sunday morning.
Keeping true to the culture.
It is, and then we also want to use the facilities to do Japanese cultural events. We do our annual Matsuri, which is a festival. Japanese will create a festival for any reason.
Like most cultures.
And so, we like to do it in the springtime to help kind of kick off the summer season. And we have food booths, Japanese food, cultural entertainment, different demonstrations and exhibits, and so that people can have that opportunity without having to go to Japan.
I imagine volunteers are very important to your effort.
It is. Just like any other organization, volunteers really help us. Being on a very tight budget, staffing-wise, just like anybody else, we'd love to have a full staff, but we're working our way up to that point. But volunteers from the community definitely help us out in being docents to help other groups coming in, school kids, senior groups, whatever, whomever may be coming in, to show them around, tell them story of Hakone. Gardens, our gardeners, they're always very pleased with the volunteers we get who help out in the gardens, because that frees up a lot of their time from having to do some of the smaller tasks. Not that they're small or less important, but they've got bigger things that they need to do and get done with a limited time. And so the volunteers really do help out quite a bit.
Yeah, there's quite a rigor there, I know, and to have a hierarchy that can help get it all done is really, really important. Well, share with our viewers how they can come and be a part of Hakone, and how they can support this future vision that you have.
Certainly. Well, first of all, let me go back a step. We actually have a master plan which the City of Saratoga and the Hakone Foundation approved. And so this is really going to take us into the future, and it's a 4-phase program. And the first phase is actually part of the pond filtration system, which we just started on. So the first phase is the pond filtration system. Second phase is going to be the renovation of the pond, so that once we have the nice quality water for them to swim in, we're going to have a nice environment. Because right now, the original pond was built as a swimming hole for the kids. Back 100 years ago. Exactly. And so the shallow edges. So that's going to be the next phase of our program. So we're going to be starting a program, capital campaign, fundraising program, where we can start to do the renovation so that they have a safer environment to swim in, deeper, to keep them from the predators.
Share with our viewers, how can they find out more?
Well, they can actually go to our website, www.hakone.com. They can come visit Hakone. We're open every day of the year, except for Christmas and New Year's. To answer your question, how can the community help? Come visit. All that money goes back into the operating funds for Hakone and for future programs. Become a member. Members are delightful, and they keep coming back. And there are also our passion and voice reaching out as well.
Okay, well, thank you, Shozo. Really nice to have you with us today.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.